So I wake up from a procedure to remove a hemorrhoid, and my colorectal surgeon's leaning over me, and she says, "I'm so sorry, but I think it's cancer." I said, "What do you mean?" It's a hemorrhoid. And she said, it looks like it maybe will get results back in a couple of days. It could be one of a couple things, and it's very small, so you should be in good shape." And she leaves the room, and I turn to my husband, and I'm still sort of giddy from the anesthesia, and I say, "Why? Why me? Why can't I get a normal, respectable cancer like everybody else? Why do I have to get butt cancer?" And so we laugh, and I'm waiting for those, as you all are probably familiar with, those 48 hours to get the results. And I was trying very hard not to do the Google, right? You know the Google. And I'm waiting, and the next day comes, and then I'm thinking, I just need to know. And so the Google, and I look up anal tumor, and there's a scroll of things that it could be, and none of them were good. And I couldn't shake those numbers that I was seeing. And so I, at that point, put a ban on the Google. And I decided, you know what? I can't see what's out there until I know what is specific to my situation, until I know what the PET scan says, until I hear it from my doctor. And I had a friend once tell me a Zen quote that was something like, "Do only what needs to be done and nothing more," which I could never relate to, because I'm like, do what needs to be done and then everything more. And I thought about it, and I thought, hold only what is mine to hold and nothing more. And at this point, it's probably cancer, because I was living the trauma of all these things that weren't me. And so that began sort of my ban on the Google. And my husband is a researcher, and so he was sort of the filter for very kind, generous people that were sending research that I didn't need to see. And I get the call, and it turns out that it is anal mucosal melanoma that we've heard a little bit about. And so it really wasn't butt cancer, but I called it that. It was melanoma, but it was a very rare form. And I did hear from a doctor locally that 1 in 2.5 million people contracted. And I'm like, that's, again, not the group that I wanted to be in. But what that meant was there was also not very much of a protocol at that time. Things are changing, right? But there wasn't very much of a protocol. There weren't I was in a little small bucket. There weren't people I could talk to about it. And there weren't experts just in that field. And there wasn't research or clinical studies about it, because it was exempt from most of the other clinical studies, as far as what I understood. And so my local oncologist said he couldn't see me. He told me I'd probably have a colostomy. That's what he thought needed to happen. I go to see Dr. Chang here at U of M. Some of you are nodding, right, for colorectal surgery. And he's telling me, no, that's what they used to do. But the latest research shows that doing a less invasive surgery, a wide local excision, is something that we do now, because we recommend it now, because it has generally the same survival outcomes. And my husband said, you need to prepare yourself to think about, do you want to know these survival outcomes? And at that point, usually I'd like to know everything, and I thought I didn't want to know. But at that moment, I thought, I need to know, I need this as information to inform my decisions, right, of how I want to spend my time, however long that's going to be. And so I did ask, and he told me. And I was stunned. I said, well, I'm only stage 2. Right? How is that possible? It was quite devastating for me. I didn't understand it. It was different than, it was worse than like normal melanoma folks, right? And so on the drive home, I call my family and my mom and my dad and my brothers and my sister and my stepmom, and I'm repeating these numbers that I can't unsee or unhear. And by the time I get to my hour and a half away to Kalamazoo from U of M, I feel like I'm defeated before I even start. Do you know that feeling? Right? And I remembered that when I was in graduate school at UT Austin in theater, we had Marcia Gay Harden, who's an Academy Award-winning actress and a UT alum. She came to speak to us, and she said, when I was in graduate school, or I guess she was in undergrad, when I was getting my BFA, all of us knew that it was like a 1 in a million shot to be able to make it as an actor. And she said that everybody, including herself, was looking at this saying, why me? Why would I get picked? I'm not going to get picked. And she realized that that was not only not helpful, but destructive to her ability to work towards her goal or her dream. And so I thought about that and I thought, okay, why not me? Why can't I be in that group of survivors? Why not? I can be 1 in 2.5 million. I can certainly be in this group, right? And that flipping the switch, reframing the situation for myself really emboldened me. It gave me a sense that there was hope and that there was a real possibility, and I needed to approach what was in front of me with that level of determination that I was going to be there and I needed people around me to do the same. And what that did for me was it helped me, first of all, define a framework that I used throughout my journey, which included you get the information you didn't want to hear or you were blindsided by, and I'd stop, breathe, reframe what's happening. So why not me? And then reset. All the other things that could happen, let's just focus on what's right here. And that helped me put some blinders on it, because I know, as Valerie was talking about, sort of the mental health issue with this, like, how do you deal with all this? It's very, very painful. And so I decided, well, I need to do everything I can to keep this from coming back, do everything I can to be in that group. And that included going to get second opinions. Because at U of M, they were saying, we just do the surgery, and then if margins are clear, which they were, yay, then after you do the surgery, you just live your life, right? And so I wanted to hear from the other experts in melanoma. So my husband, who are both musicians, we did what we called the cancer tour, and we went around to all the big places and talked to people, and they had conflicting expert opinions. There was one clinical trial out of China. It was a phase 2 clinical study, and it was a combination chemotherapy, and it showed that there was perhaps some increase in chances for extension of life. And so, a third of the experts said, no, that's not gonna work. Don't try that. A third said, it's worth a shot. There's good things that are in the pipeline now. So let's, do anything we can to keep you alive until they're available. And then the other third said, we don't know. You could try it either way. I decided to go for it. And one of the reasons is because, like Valerie, the week before I had volunteered at my son's kindergarten. I cry just thinking about it. His kindergarten Halloween party, right? And when you have a little 6-year-old, I think I want to be able to tell him that no matter what happens, Mama tried her best. I did everything I could. So for me, that meant a treatment, but it also meant, what can I do to support that? And all of the doctors had said exercise can help you, just be good for you, right? Having a better diet could help me, and stress relief, which I thought was kind of funny because this was the most stressful experience of my life, right? How do I relieve stress when you're really scared? And so I started an exercise regimen. I used to exercise, but I hadn't been consistent. So I had a really consistent exercise regimen. I had decided to do this chemo and pelvic radiation, which caused a lot of fatigue. And I experienced for myself that exercise counterintuitively is kind of the antidote to fatigue. So that helped me. I did a diet that was mostly plant-based. And I felt then I just want to avoid, nobody told me that I needed to do that. I just felt like I want to avoid adding any more toxins to my body if I can. And then in terms of the mental health, I kind of religiously started to meditate and do yoga. And that really not only helped me deal with the stress, but it also helped me face what was in front of me, have the presence to be there with what was in front of me. And so for some of you, it might be your faith. For me, that was something that was very helpful. So I felt like that was part of the things that really helped buoy my spirit. The other things that I found really important were the things that we used to call my antidotes. So if I'd go in for an infusion and it's a sterile environment, we'd go out to nature and go for a walk afterwards. If I did something not fun like a PET scan, I'd go to an art gallery and see beauty. As Valerie was saying, she didn't want to be identified or by necessarily her cancer. It was the idea that you still want to live your life. And I realized, I don't know, none of us do, how long our lives are. I want to really, so I can't wait for this to be over. This is my life now. I want to live it. I want to live it. And so when I felt good on those 2 days out of 3 weeks from chemo, we would go for a hike or a walk or something that would boost spirits and really be engaged with life. So I felt after all of that stronger and healthier than I had really in years. And this was 9 months later. I'd come back from a trip to the Southwest where I was hiking in the Red Rocks and felt great. And I did my surveillance scans and I got a call that I had stage 4 cancer, 2.5 centimeter tumor in my liver, innumerable in my lungs, 1 in my left rib and 3 in the brain. And I was blindsided and devastated. And I came to talk to Dr. Lau and I was feeling like I just want to do what I know how to do. I don't want to put anything else in my body. I just want to be there for my family with my husband and my little boy. And he said to me, if you were my sister, I would beg you to do this treatment. It has that much potential. And I think I felt like I had just kind of done a Hail Mary treatment. And now it really helped me reset to identify, wait a second, this actually might have a chance to make a difference. And so I decided to go ahead with the immunotherapy, the IPI and Nivo combination. And the first round was fine. Yeah, I was very fatigued, but it wasn't, I wasn't sick in the way that I was for chemo. And then right before the second round, I had a big birthday party and my husband and I played a concert. We just wanted to, before the second round of chemo, the song that I had played earlier, the Can't Take My Heart, Cancer, we recorded and posted on YouTube. And so I was living. By the second round, I suddenly started having these crazy fevers, like 104 and then back to 99, 102, and I was hospitalized. They were looking for infection, and I was really worried that things were not going my way. And they do a CT scan locally to see what had happened. And they say, well, here's we don't see any infection. Your liver tumor's still there. It's 2 centimeters. And I said, no, my liver tumor is 2.5 centimeters. And they show me the report, and it had shrunk. And we send this to Dr. Lau, who was at a conference. He looks at the scans, and he says, yeah, it looks like things are shrinking. And that was a major reset. I thought things were falling apart, but my body was fighting it. And that gave me quite a boost. And by the third round, all of the tumors had vanished in my body. It was a miracle. I couldn't believe it. And then Dr. Lau pulls the scans and says, but there are 4 new ones in your brain. Yes, I was completely floored, right? What do we do with this? And so he just stopped the treatment and put me on steroids, see if we can get, that could be said, I think it might be, it could be related to injury or inflammation. And so we stopped the treatment and I did everything I could. I was just a little Zen master then. I'm trying so hard to get these to shrink. And I was, really feeling despair, but trying to work through it. And I came back for the next scan and they had grown and it hadn't worked, the steroids or my intentions. And I was at a real low point. And I wanted to say that I mentioned the things that had kind of buoyed my spirit and my body through these treatments. But the thing I hadn't mentioned, which was one of the most important things, was my community. My husband, my family, my friends, my baby, the people around me that I turn to that sort of carried me through these most difficult times. And that was central at the time where I was having so many responses, like that list of side effects, I had them, right? The inflammation, all of that stuff was challenging. I couldn't do the yoga that I used to because my arthritis was so bad. These things were really wearing on me, but my community was there, and I included my community, my oncologist, Dr. Lau, and Heather, and Diane, and Natalie, and Diane, and the people that my team that was there to support me. They sort of lifted me up at my most vulnerable time. And then the other thing was Dr. Lau's clinical judgment, which was impeccable because he said, okay, now we need to do radiation, brain radiation. And I did the SRS radiation that Dr. Kim just spoke about. And it wasn't fun. Chemo wasn't fun. The other radiation wasn't fun. This wasn't fun. And things started to swell in my brain and it didn't feel good. And Dr. Lau said, I think that it's a flare up. I think it could be growing, but I think this is probably a flare. And it was. They started to shrink after that. And then I had one tumor in the brain, right here in my frontal lobe, that was very poorly behaved and had a bit of a tantrum and continued to grow and swelled. And I had an edema around it. And Dr. Lau had to stop the Nevo, the single agent I was on, and put me on steroids and said, we've got to watch it. Well, after a few months, it kind of grew a little more. I moved my brain a little bit off center. And he's like, okay, we got to operate. And he said, but I don't think this is melanoma. I think you're in remission. I think this is tumor necrosis, which can be a possible side effect of brain radiation or the treatment. It could just be injury. And so I go across the street to the neurosurgeon who said, oh no, that's melanoma. And I'm thinking, I said to my husband, I can't even think about melanoma. Like brain surgery is enough for me to think about right now. Like that's what I'm holding. And they operated, and the surgical staff told me that they removed the lesion, which was, as they told me, the size of an apricot or a walnut, or as I say, some other small, delicious food that you might like. And it was benign. Yes. And I was so beyond thrilled that Dr. Lau and his clinical judgment was correct, and my neurosurgeon was thrilled that he had been wrong. And so the treatments killed my cancer. And I feel that my healthy practices and that mindset and my community, and which includes my medical staff, are what buoyed me to help me manage some of those treatments. And then a lot of good luck my way, right? That conversation that I had with Dr. Chang about survival outcomes at 5 years, that happened less than a mile from this room 5 years ago this week. And so I am here as living proof of the power of hope, the unbelievable medical advances, and the dedication of and commitment of my family and community and the medical staff that commit their lives to helping people like me, like us, and to the patients who were brave enough to do the clinical trials. So I am forever grateful. And in February, it will be 3 years in remission, and I'm going to knock on a lot of wood. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Ann.